All right, Mayor, it's 7:02 and you're live.
Can't hear you, Mayor.
You're muted, Mayor.
All right, Mayor, it's 7:02 and you're live.
Okay, thank you. This is the October 20th, 2020 meeting of the City of Oneonta Common Council, and it is hereby called to order.
Can't hear you, Mayor.
You're muted.
I'm muted.
All right, Mayor, it's 7:02 and you're live.
Someone has YouTube going in the background, so it's playing on the 20-second delay.
Someone who's in the meeting has YouTube playing in the background?
Correct.
I did.
Oh, thanks, John.
A mistake.
Okay. Is my audio working? Okay. All right, well, I'm going to start again. October 2020, and this is our meeting of the Common Council. It is hereby called to order, and I will open the meeting by calling the roll. Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Councilmember Davies.
Here.
Councilmember Risberger.
Here.
Councilmember Lepari-Shu. Councilmember Lepari-Shu, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Councilmember Carson.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Rafter.
Here.
Councilmember Drenick.
Here.
Okay, everybody's on board. Let me just change screens here. I want to open tonight with a special statement. You know, I'm proud to say that the people of the City of Oneonta tend to focus on what unites us, not what divides us. But unfortunately, this past week, we gave them the opportunity to falsely focus on things that may divide us. So I wanted to take an opportunity tonight to correct that. I think we're all painfully aware that our country is very much divided on many issues. One of those issues centers on respect between communities and law enforcement, an issue which in recent years, I'm proud to say, has not divided this community. The men and women of the Oneonta Police Department serve and protect this community with both respect and professionalism, and we are very fortunate to have them. Our elected officials and city administration have shown consistent support, both in acknowledgement and in funding for our men and women in blue. Recently, both Councilmember Risberger and Chief Brenner made statements which others have been able to construe as implying otherwise. Both have expressed regrets for those statements and would like to do so publicly this evening. So I want to call on Councilmember Risberger first.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to address the recent online postings by some in our community that would like to paint a picture of me as one who does not support our Oneonta Police Department. While I share some of the blame for what led to this misinformation, I can assure you that I support each and every one of our officers, and I fully recognize the difficult job they have in front of them each and every day they put on their uniform. As I'm sure everyone is aware, our nation's communities, large and small, are divided on many issues at the moment. Our country has many different groups with strongly held beliefs, and some prefer to proudly display their belief on a flag, banner, or other symbol, either at work, home, on their car, or at a protest. With this in mind, and trying to thread the proverbial needle to avoid misconceptions and a contentious debate like that which occurred in Cooperstown last year over their flagpole. I attempted to lead a discussion last week during a council committee meeting regarding the fact that the city of Oneonta has no policy regarding what is flown on our flagpoles. Without such policy, we are open to having various groups requesting equal time for their flags to be flown. The question we face is this: do we want to allow our municipal flagpoles to become billboards for individual groups? How would we then decide which flag flies? The daily news cycle shows us the flags that are out there, such as the Black Lives Matter flag, rainbow flag, POW/MIA flag, etc., etc., etc. What if a group wanted to fly the Confederate flag? Sadly, flags seem to polarize us more and more these days, with the exception of one, the American flag. During the meeting, the thin blue line flag was mistakenly brought into the discussion by me, which I regret. The discussion was never about that flag, and it was my fault that it was brought up. Additionally, the time limitations on the meeting only served to hurry a discussion and create misunderstandings. In hindsight, I should have reached out to Chief Brenner beforehand to present the anticipated problem the city was facing and to allow us to discuss and come forward with a solution that was amicable to all. So moving forward, I'd like to apologize to the police chief and his staff for any misconceptions that he may have taken from the meeting. I've had the honor on many occasions of witnessing the stellar job our officers, our chief and lieutenant have displayed while on duty in our downtown. I've seen them deal with very difficult situations while demonstrating patience and fortitude. In addition, the regular training that they undertake has made them a top-notch police department that we should all be proud of. We're living in a very stressful time that has everyone living a little bit on edge right now. COVID-19 has led to unprecedented unemployment. Our children are only in school part-time, causing parents to scramble each day to find childcare. And our eyesight is being challenged with the amount of computer screen time we're all forced to endure. That being said, I truly believe that Oneontians are a resilient people, and during difficult times, we prefer to come together rather than to tear each other down. I also believe that better days are ahead because they must be. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And Chief Brenner has a statement to make as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Risper. Recently, the mutually supportive relationship between the City of Oneonta Police Department, the Oneonta Common Council, and administration for the city has been called into question. I regret that any statement from me may have implied otherwise. Recently, during a legislative committee meeting, a discussion was brought forward regarding the use of city property for demonstrations, displays, and expression of public opinion, a worthy topic of discussion. The discussion used as an example the thin blue line flag that was on the flagpole in front of the public safety building. The discussion was meant to be an open conversation regarding the need for a policy and possible ideas in terms of the wording or visions of the policy. The discussion, due in part to a time factor, never seemed to come to a conclusion or an actionable end. After the meeting concluded, seeing how the thin blue line flag on the public safety flagpole was the example for the discussion, I removed the flag from the building's flagpole. My decision to remove the flag was to avoid it being used as a discussion point, either for or against a policy, and to avoid it from stimulating either pro or anti-law enforcement controversy. This topic has since snowballed and has been misinterpreted, leading to false allegations of a non-supportive relationship between the council and the police department, including budget-related topics and staffing. The police department enjoys the support of the council, the community, and the administrations in those areas, as well as others that are crucial in fulfilling the mission of the department. The council has repeatedly and continually demonstrated their support for the police department in providing the resources needed to advance its mission to serve and protect the citizens of the city of Oneonta. The police department appreciates the positive construction support of the community, the mayor, elected officials, the administration, and will continue to provide quality service every minute of every day to the citizens and visitors of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Let me say that I've spoken with both Dave and Doug this week, and nobody has been hurt more by the division that we have seen this week than these two men. Look, we certainly have enough problems to solve without creating new ones that simply don't exist. I am very proud that the people of Oneonta usually put politics aside and work together to make our community stronger, and one of which we can all be proud. Many of the recent accusations that have been spreading through social media and email have been both painful and false. So just let me reiterate what you've already heard and be clear. No one at any time either ordered or requested that any flag be removed from a pole. And the council has continuously supported full funding for filling all open positions at the Oneonta Police Department and the purchase of all required equipment. Look, we are all humans and we all at times say things imperfectly. I want to thank Chief Brenner and Councilmember Risberger for having the courage to acknowledge that tonight. I truly believe that we are fortunate to have them both working for us here in the city of Oneonta. And I thank them both tonight, not only for all they do for this community, but for stepping up tonight and correcting the record and trying to repair the bit of anger that erupted this week, which really should not have had any basis to do so. So thank you both. Okay. With that, we're going to go to our public hearing. And let me just get my agenda up here. Okay, this is a public hearing. This is the mayor's public hearing. The ordinance has already been approved by council for the proposed adoption of an ordinance to add chapter 122 to the City of Oneonta Municipal Code entitled Masks and Face Coverings. This would require social distancing on all public and private indoor and outdoor locations within the city, and wearing a mask when not socially distanced. This ordinance was laid electronically on September 16th, 2020, and passed by the council on October 6th, 2020, by a vote of 5-2. With that, I believe we have some people here to speak tonight. Kerry will let them into the Zoom meeting, and then I'll call upon each one at a time to speak.
Here they come. You have 4 individuals, Mayor, WKTV, and then 3 individuals. And they're all in.
Okay. Okay, I see we have Mahim and Kevin and Aaron are the individuals. And I see that WKTV is on board as well. If they have a question, I'll take it. I'm going to start with Mahim. And if you would please give your name and your address where you currently live.
Gary, I don't see where Mahim is. I think he dropped.
Okay, it's a she. Okay, we'll wait for Mahim to get reconnected. We'll go to Kevin.
Hello all. My name is Kevin Perch. I currently live at Hillside Commons, which is 150 Blodgett Drive, here in Oneonta. I'm a senior at the college, and I'm currently the chief of staff of the Student Association. But most importantly, here at this meeting, I'm simply a member of the Oneonta community. Regarding the pandemic, I think the way that I was affected most personally was socially more than any other way. The limited interaction that I'm having in the town with those of my peers who elected to remain in the community has led me to leave a different style of life than I was anticipating for my senior year especially. But that being said, on the topic of mask wearing, I think I advocated for wholeheartedly. I think it's pretty clear cut the effects that it can have in reducing the spread. I personally even think that I will be wearing a mask beyond the pandemic, as I've just found sort of a comfort in it, interestingly enough. And I've sort of mulled back and forth over the past couple of days, as I spoke to the mayor last night as well, regarding the law that's on the table to be signed into order. And I ultimately came to a decision, not one that I feel strongly about per se, because I do think as much enforcement that can be made with regard to mask wearing will be helpful for the overall community. I do not think that the sort of intrusion that this law, even though may not intend, can elect and allow for private residences. I think for private businesses, for public streets, that mask wearing is completely appropriate. And I know that the exception and the stipulation in the law would allow for those who live in the same residence to not have to wear masks next to each other, 6 feet apart or not. But even further, I do not think that the piece of legislation on the table is the one that I'd want to see signed into law to be enacted.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Okay, I'm going to go to Aaron. Can you hear me, Aaron?
Yes, I can hear you, Mayor Herzig.
Okay. Please identify yourself and where you currently live, and then the floor is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to speak at this hearing and address the council and yourself. My name is Aaron Sanborn Overby. I live at 7 Yeager Avenue. I'm in Ward 2 and professional here in the city. My wife is a professor up at the SUNY campus. And I wanted to speak briefly in support of this ordinance. And I appreciate the effort that the council has put into it and the conversations that have been around this and how, in my view, thoughtfully they've progressed in trying to find a way forward. And particularly what really stands out to me is wanting to give the local police department and the city as a whole enforcement tools that they can use, particularly as we look at where we've been and where we're headed. And so I've seen this as a local enforcement opportunity. And it's also, it seems, one thing that I thought, for those who haven't maybe followed some of the development of this conversation, looking at the original proposal, which was really to have more of a just mandate for masks once our population grew in the school term, to always be masked inside the high foot traffic areas where you might not be able to avoid people. And I saw the reasoning behind that, but it also, and I think this was sort of rightly deduced in a lot of conversations, seemed to go too far. It didn't create a lot of flexibility. And so for me, the ordinance that came down, which was adopting the state health mandate, seemed to be the right compromise. And it is the compromise position because it lets us make that decision. When can we socially distance? When is masking appropriate? And when both are masked, then interactions can proceed. And also I thought it was really interesting that it is written as such that it'll go away when the state one does. So I thought that was also a really good mechanism to keep in it. And it seemed to me to really empower the city to take steps and to respond more dynamically. Legislation takes a long time, rightly so, to go through the process. And when this sort of tool is needed, you might not be able to afford a 6 to 8 week process of trying to put something in place. It's interesting to me that we didn't have it for the summer and we did pretty well. But things change. I know, of course, the students coming back was a big event, but it wasn't just students. There was some changes in behavior, but we also just have a lot more people in the same geographic space. There's a lot more of us to run into each other. Also, winter's coming, you know, to quote the Game of Thrones. We don't know what that looks like. And it seemed to me appropriate to give particularly the police department the best tool set they can moving forward, relying on them still to use discretion and wisdom as they do with the other ordinances. Because what we have heard in multiple conversations is that the way it currently is as a state mandate, both the code office and the police office in practice cannot enforce this the way that they would need to. And we also did just have, you know, a big outbreak that we thankfully have been able to stabilize and move forward from. So I support this for those reasons, but I'm also very sympathetic to the concerns people have had. I do view government power as potential good, but also inherently coercive. It limits our freedoms to make it possible to live together. And so it really needs the scrutiny of the citizens. I appreciate that so many people are invested in this conversation because we really want that power to be used as little as possible, but while still having the effective results that we need to have a strong community. You know, I thought of the Oliver Wendell Holmes has this quote, "My liberty to swing my fist ends at your nose." And I thought, you know, this virus is basically a fist, you know, that it's not, I know it's been politicized, but it's not an ideology. It's not an emotion. It's not a fear. It's a physical object, and it infects people when it reaches them. And the infection rate, if it reaches you, is 100%. No one's immune. It's a novel virus. We need time to come to grips with it and move forward. And so, so that's my reason I was happy with both the fact that the council chose to take up this type of ordinance, but also the restraint that they showed in choosing the path they did. And the last thing I will say is I do also understand the concerns about, you know, does this go too far and move into people's private lives? But this is one of the insidious things about this type of infectious disease. It turns our our connectivity, which is so essential to humans, against us. And really, the types of things it addresses, the things that we need to do to mask, the simple precautions, they ultimately are not private decisions, even if they happen within the home. You know, even if it seems like, oh, well, it's me and my friends and we've accepted the risks between us. But then who else are you connected to? You're making choices for them too. If you're on the street, like I love the amount of work and effort that people have done on Main Street in the stores. And yet still, you go around and you'll see the one or two people who don't wear a mask or do something where maybe it's just passing, but they're making a choice that affects the risk for me, for my kids and family as well. And so I think we do need to acknowledge our connectivity in these types of times and really take what seems to be fairly restrained precautions that can really help us pull through together as a city and a community. So that's my 3 cents maybe. And I do really appreciate your work, Mayor, and the work of the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Bill, are you on board to make a comment? You're muted, Bill.
I'm muted. There we are. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I just wanted to share our experience in Cooperstown a little bit. I was fortunate enough to be part of an unofficial review of the proposed mask law in Cooperstown, and noticed a couple things. First of all, the typographical error, but that's here nor there. But the most important thing was that it's very difficult to regulate the in-house behavior inside someone's home. Obviously, we have a Constitution and the Fourth Amendment. It's very clear about what we can do there. I appreciate that as Cooperstown has a unique problem during this summer where we narrowed our sidewalks because of the allowing restaurants to have tables out in front of the sidewalks. This created a problem. We had people who actually were forced into the street because they didn't want to walk 6 feet next to somebody who's dining at a table. And when I understand, the state health department got complaints that Cooperstown was forcing people into the street. So they enacted this mask law and drafted a mask law to mandate mask wearing on Main Street in our business district. And the reason also that was done, everyone knows there's a state law about that now, but the state law is very difficult to enforce because it involves both criminal and health department regulations. That can make it difficult. I don't think anybody wants a criminal record because they didn't wear a mask. So what the Cooperstown did is made it basically a civil penalty, you know, a ticket. And they've issued a few. We had a very, I think, successful mask wearing summer, even though our quantity of people were down. The New York state law that you've patterned your law after does have the phrase in it for basically private residences. But that law, according to my understanding and talking to people who understand how the New York state law was crafted, is really for places like New York City that have vestibules and lobbies. If you have a vestibule or a lobby or an entranceway, even though that's within a private residence structure, that really is a public area. And they wanted to make the law apply to those situations, which they did. I think your law has a problem with that, in that I would hate to see a law crafted, any law crafted, where the first person that goes to court has the entire law thrown out because of constitutionality. I think so it's better to make the law correct the first way, really get a lot of input as you are doing tonight, craft a good law, and then try to enact it. You have a difficult problem with people of gatherings inside private residences. And it's going to be a very difficult thing to do to monitor that, except the health department in New York State does say no more than 50 people. Gary and Mayor and your council, I appreciate your time. Take this from just experience from your little village up north. Thanks again, Gary.
Thank you, Bill. Good to see you. And Stacy has joined us. Stacy, are you here to speak? Stacy, if you can, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. You may be muted. Stacy, if you can hear me, I think you're muted. There you go. No, maybe not. Okay, Stacy, unfortunately, we're not able to hear you. If you connect, just shout out so we know you're here, and we'll let you speak. I see we have WKTV here. Are you here to comment or just to listen and report? Okay, I'll assume you're here just to listen and report. Carrie, I think you have some correspondence that you received on the subject and by email or a letter.
That is correct.
Are you prepared to read those?
Yes, sir. First piece of correspondence was a phone message left by Edward Palumbo, who states in summary that he opposes the mask ordinance and cites concerns regarding the Fourth Amendment. Another message received from Frances Saylor, a local healthcare worker, who states in general she is dissatisfied with the mask mandate, is concerned about infringements of rights. You have a letter from Steve Lundner that reads, Dear Mayor and other members of the Oneonta Common Council, with regard to the proposed ordinance, an ordinance to require the use of face masks or face coverings within the city to prevent the spread of infectious disease, thank you for taking this issue up. Please permit me two brief comments. First, in general, I support the passage of such an ordinance for Oneonta, with the exception that you will closely monitor our evolving local situation and provide close guidance and supervision regarding OPD's enforcement. I believe the text of the ordinance both permits and requires such flexibility as it uses the word, quote, may, rather than, quote, shall. He references section 122 sub 6, which is entitled Enforcement Penalties for Offenses. Subsection A, this law may only be enforced during the time that a declaration of emergency is issued by the New York State Governor due to an epidemic or disease outbreak that is communicable through droplet contact or airborne transmission. Second, I am not comfortable with section 122 sub 5 exceptions sub D. Persons playing a sport or participating in a fitness class or recreational activity are not required to wear a face mask if individuals are unable to tolerate a face covering for the physical activity. Persons must put a face mask or face covering on as soon as such physical activity has ended. If the intent of the ordinance is to limit the spread of a virulent disease for reasons of public safety, why should this exception be included? And if there are to be exceptions, why not include construction workers, etc.? In any case, if you deem this one exemption essential, perhaps thinking about school sports, perhaps some fine tuning is called for. To me, it seems odd that a group of students just hanging out and quietly chatting needs masks, but if they're playing basketball and panting, they don't. And are there legal precedents that have found that barbecues, beer pong, and other outdoor social activities don't qualify as recreational activities? Thank you for your service to our city, Steve Longner. From Fran Colon to Oneonta Mayor Herzig, Oneonta City Clerk Powell, 6th Ward Council Representative Harrington. Subject, October 20th public hearing of proposed mask law. Please read and enter into the public records of said meeting. Dear Mayor Herzig, while I recognize the seriousness of the COVID-19 virus and I realize the need to prevent the potential spread of the disease, I'm writing to express my firm opposition and lack of support to the proposed law. I believe there is good intent in the nature of the law, but I believe it goes way beyond any reasonable legal limits, which I'm sure have been investigated by City Attorney Merzig. To require masks and social distancing in public places is reasonable and probably enforceable, but to have a law that requires enforcement of the same stipulations in a private residence and on private property is excessive. I've heard all of the, quote, not to worry, it's only going to be enforced if there's a reasonable clause, end quote, comments, and that alone is disheartening. It only takes one disgruntled neighbor to make a call to the police department, and then the police are obligated to investigate, which makes me wonder if a search warrant is required. If you sign this proposal into law and the police go past my house and see that I'm out mowing my lawn with no mask and a neighbor stops to chat, also with no mask, are we both subject to being ticketed? How crazy is that? Per Chapter 122, Sub 1, Article 1 of the law, quote, at the time of the enactment of this ordinance, there were approximately 700 positive cases of COVID-19 diagnosed among students attending the State University at Oneonta, and many of those students continue to reside in the community despite the closure of the campus. It should be pointed out that there is no date concerning, quote, at the time of enactment. Is this the reason for the law? If so, the law is not necessary. As of this date, October 16, 2020, there are less than 20 confirmed cases in all of Otsego County, which seems to indicate that any existing restrictions are effective. I could find no similar data of confirmed cases within the city of Oneonta on this date. Why make a law that is seemingly a knee-jerk reaction to the ill-conceived and poorly coordinated return of the SUNY students to Oneonta? Mr. Mayor, even you yourself have stated that the current methods are apparently effective when you stated in an October 16th article in the Daily Star, quote, transmission from the students to the larger community was stopped, end quote. In summation, a law to require masks and social distancing in public places, okay, sure. A law to require the same in private homes and on private property, no. Thank you for your consideration, Fran Colon, 4 Duane Street, Oneonta. In the final letter, I respectfully ask that the council not add Chapter 122 to Oneonta's municipal code. Requiring individuals to wear masks on private property violates our civil rights, is unconstitutional, and based on the threat invalid. Since Otsego County no longer has a state of emergency, it ended on April 13, 2020. It has no authority to make or enforce a mask mandate. Of Otsego County's 60,244 residents, only 7 people, or 0.012% of the county's population, have died from COVID-19. Clearly, this virus is not a deadly threat to the overwhelming majority of residents. However, governmental overreach such as this mask mandate is a threat to the freedoms we used to enjoy as Americans. According to Johns Hopkins COVID data, 33,366 people in New York have died from COVID. That is 0.17% of New York's total population of 19,440,500. Again, there is no longer a basis for statewide emergency. Furthermore, according to https://www.nysenate.gov/legislation/laws/EXC/28, under the laws of New York, Article 2, Sub B, Section 28.3, the declaration of disaster emergency, quote, shall remain in effect for a period not to exceed 6 months or until rescinded by the governor, whichever comes first. Therefore, Governor Cuomo's 7-month state of emergency is also unconstitutional, invalid, and unlawful. As our civil servants, you took an oath to uphold the United States Constitution and protect the civil rights of the residents of Oneonta from discrimination and harassment. Please do not adopt this mask mandate. Do your job. Protect freedom. Sincerely, Rhonda Zook. And that is the final piece of correspondence I have. Mayor, you're muted.
Is there anybody on the call who is here to speak or wishes to speak that I have not called upon? If so, speak up. Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing. Let me say that nothing about this has been easy. Certainly, this pandemic has presented us with many difficult decisions to make. Ones which we've never had to deal with before, and ones for which there are no precedents for. I want to say first that I fully support the wearing of masks as recommended by the CDC and the overwhelming majority of doctors and scientists. I also want to add that this proposed ordinance adds no restrictions on the people of the city of Oneonta beyond which already exist in New York State's public health law. I believe council's intent on adopting this ordinance was to make local law enforcement of the current New York State law more effective. I do not, however, believe that this ordinance will achieve that purpose. This ordinance requires wearing a mask when one is within 6 feet of another person. So if you're walking down Main Street without a mask, you're not in violation of the law. If a person walks out of a store or walks out of a car and crosses your path for a second, you are in violation of the law. I'm not sure how the police would enforce this. Certainly we don't expect our police officers to follow somebody down the street who's not wearing a mask, waiting for them to cross the path of a person in order to ticket them. For practical purposes, I believe that wearing a mask when you are in our higher density areas, such as our business districts, our MU1 and MU2 districts, multiple use districts, is the right thing to do at all times. I want it to be known that I support a mask ordinance which keeps us safer. I do not believe that this one will, and I am therefore exercising my right to veto this ordinance. I want to also say that while the language regarding residential properties is taken directly from the current New York State legislation, I do not know if it represents the council's focus or its intent, as I do not believe that the council gave even a moment of discussion to that issue. Wearing a mask at all times in our business districts is what I believe most needed. If council can move forward and approve an ordinance which targets our areas of greatest risk in an enforceable manner, it will have my full support. With that, the hearing is closed. I want to thank everybody who came to speak, who sent in letters, who sent in emails. This is the way the system is supposed to work. And everybody's participation is valued and appreciated. And I fully understand that this is not an easy subject or an easy decision to make. There are many perspectives and ways to look at this. With that, we will go forward with our meeting. Boards and commission reports. The only board meeting I have is the environmental board, and that would be Councilmember Davies.
Thanks, Mayor. The environmental board met last Wednesday and they did not have a quorum, perhaps due in part to the fact that the date had been moved because of the Columbus Day holiday. They did, however, have a bit of discussion about beekeeping as well as trees and trees for the city and purchasing trees, but there was nothing formally moved beyond that board because they did not have the quorum needed. So they will have another meeting next month in which they will hope to bring forward a proposal with regards to beekeeping.
Any questions for Councilmember Davies? Thank you very much. Now we'll go to Legislative Committee. That's Councilmember Rafter.
Thank you, Mayor. The Legislative Committee met last week. There were two items on the agenda, neither of which represented legislation as such, so they were both open for discussion. One was related to the possibility of a flag ordinance, which was discussed briefly here in terms of the misunderstandings that were generated, perhaps inside the city regarding that. The other was a proposal to modify the snow emergency regulations. And that was discussed. And I understand that, that there are a couple of concerns, but there's no legislation to be moving forward regarding this. But one is the likelihood of having some parking issues or parking problems later in the year when we might be getting into construction of the apartment lofts, and also work being done on the municipal garage. Both of these things can have an impact on reducing the number of parking spaces available. However, Greg, our city engineer, is going to be looking at that to a certain extent, and that'll be up for discussion at another point. But that's basically what was transpiring in the Legislative Committee meeting. That's that.
Any questions for Councilmember Rafter? Okay, thank you very much. Finance and Human Resources Committee, Councilmember Carson.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I start my report, real quick question on procedure. Obviously, you set the agenda. Is there any room for both the police chief and the fire chief to give their reports as they may have done previously?
If the council wishes that, that was discontinued under the previous city manager. If that is something that the council wishes, all they have to do is ask for it.
Okay, thank you. The Finance Human Resource Committee met on Tuesday, October 13th, 2020, of which you have multiple motions in front of you. If there's any questions, I'll take them, but I did want to point out, I don't think it's on a motion, but I did want to point out that our finance director has been applying for as much funding as possible to help us through this revenue shortage that we are incurring through 2020 and 21. That so far through the CARES funding, she secured $23,000, and there is a second round, but that amount is not known yet. I would also like to note, I believe our finance director during our budget meeting asked us to watch the meeting because they did do a pretty inviting presentation on the water worth. And I believe that's going to be a very usable tool for both water. And then I believe in 21, we're going to pick up the package for sewer. So moving us into the 21st century, that program will be very helpful. So at this time, based on the minutes that were provided to the council. Is there any questions? Hearing none, Mayor, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I want to turn to our City Health Officer, Dr. Diane Jorgensen.
Thank you, Gary. Hello, everybody. I will keep my report brief this evening. Brief overview, worldwide, there are now more than 40 million confirmed cases and over 1.6 million deaths. The number of new cases on a daily and weekly basis is slightly increasing. In the United States, we have more than 8.2 million confirmed cases and nearly 220,000 deaths. COVID-19 is now the third leading cause of death in America. In terms of trends, in the last couple of weeks, there have been many days where there have been over 60,000 new cases per day, which represents an increase over the last month. Those states which are showing the greatest increases are in the Midwest and northern Midwest. However, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Rhode Island this week all showed some slight increases. In New York State, there are 486,480 confirmed cases. And here again, the new positive cases on a daily and weekly basis have been trending a little bit upward. Although overall, because we're doing lots of testing, the state remains at about 1.2% positivity, which is well below the national average. We have in upstate seen some increases in our surrounding counties. Shenango and Broome have had upticks this week, as well as significant increase in Cortland County, which has primarily been attributed to their SUNY campus. Here in Otsego County, since I last reported to you 2 weeks ago, there have been 25 new cases. So as of today, there are now 937 total confirmed cases since the start of the pandemic, with 14 active cases and 2 hospitalizations, no new deaths. As best I can tell, of those 25 cases, 7 have been in Oneonta and all of them were SUNY students. So I think the message there is, yes, we've done a great job. Cases in the city, as well as the county, are not significantly increasing, but they're still present and present at a slightly greater level than they were over the summer. The only other thing I wanted to speak to was the wastewater testing. And what I'm hoping to do in a couple of weeks, especially with Greg being back, is give you a little more in-depth reporting on this issue. But for today, let me say that we've received 3 results since our last meeting. And those results from the 9th did show, whereas there had been non-detectable levels of SARS virus in the wastewater, SARS virus RNA. On the 9th, there was detectable level, though a low level, nowhere near where it was when we had our outbreak. Then on the 14th, the level was again non-quantifiable, reassuring, but our most recent result from the 16th again showed a slight uptick. So I think it also reflects an awareness. These tests are quite sensitive. So I think it does reflect there's still presence of COVID-19 in our community. We've been working, Greg's been developing some graphics that we'll hopefully share with you in 2 weeks, and the epidemiologists and scientists at Syracuse University and ESF, have been developing some really interesting maps and dashboards, as well as guidance around how to use this information to communicate with the public to change any approaches we have in terms of testing more or in being stronger about our mandates and guidance. So hopefully we'll be able to share that with you in a couple of weeks, and hopefully the news will be better in terms of the trends going back down. And, you know, one thing the epidemiologist did emphasize is that some of this may be good news. If we're able to document non-detectable levels of viral RNA in our wastewater, then we may be more comfortable, carefully reopening, sending our kids to school, etc. That's my report. From our task force, Dave, did you want me to? I don't think there was a whole lot more we talked at our task force meeting. Our fire and police departments have adequate PPE, no transit issues. So I
think you did a great job, Diane. Thank you. I think the only other two things I had on my long list here that it seemed like you were reading my sheet of paper here was that I believe the city's going to be putting out a short statement about Halloween.
Yeah.
We are not canceling Halloween. Some people have thought we are, but we're not canceling Halloween. We're encouraging mask wearing, of course, and maintaining social distancing. I believe the downtown merchants are considering a small event, but they're still discussing how they're going to do that because they don't want to draw a too large of a crowd. And then I think during our meeting, we talked briefly about the Christmas tree lighting would potentially be virtual. And I think, wasn't that just announced that it would be virtual, Gary?
I don't know that there's been a final announcement yet.
Okay, I thought I saw something online saying that it was going to be virtual, but I could be wrong.
Don't believe everything you see online.
Yeah, and that's still in coordination. So I think that was all we talked about.
Yes, thanks for adding that about Halloween. So yeah, we have put out a statement, and the CDC has guidance specifically that traditional trick-or-treating is considered a high-risk behavior, but acknowledging that a lot of people still want to trick-or-treat. To make it safer, we're recommending that people not hand out treats or have trick-or-treaters come up to the door, but perhaps have pre-arranged small bags or packages of treats at a little bit of a distance from the front door that groups can come take. So hopefully Halloween will go well. And Mark I don't know if you want to talk about Main Street.
Yes, certainly. We are not, the Main Street merchants are not inclined to do any kind of big event, obviously. We were trying to make certain that something that for generations people have brought their children down to Main Street. We don't, the expectation is that they will do that again. And so we are going to be closing the street from 1 o'clock until 3:30 on Saturday, Halloween. And merchants and restaurants, many of them, and they'll have signs in their windows, will have someone posted in the colleges, and the students at those colleges are assisting. So thank you very much to those folks, anybody who happens to be watching from the colleges. They will be properly gloved, and they will be at the front doors and distributing candies for that basically 2.5 hour period.
Anybody else have any questions for anybody? Councilmember Murphy?
Hi, Dr. Jorgensen. I just, I've seen a lot of, this kind of goes to don't believe everything you see online. But I've seen information from the CDC that it looks like just about everywhere with the exception of 4 or 5 states are really starting to either steadily grow or are undergoing unchecked growth in COVID. And I know you said that we're still looking at the, knock on wood, okay. Are there any recommendations as we get into the colder season? I hear a lot that as it gets colder, they're expecting numbers to grow. Is there anything extra that we can do or anything else that we should be keeping in mind as we're kind of changing our habits, changing the seasons?
So great question. I think that moving indoors is a big concern with the cold weather, because we know that being primarily respiratory virus, the droplets and even aerosols are more likely spread in an indoor environment. So just again, emphasizing the importance of masks and, you know, rethinking gatherings as the holidays come along is something that's being discussed by the experts. So, you know, the travel ban for New York State is still in place, and I think there are 30 some states. So I think holidays are going to look a lot different for people, and just maybe making people aware of that. With flu season coming up, it's very important that people get their flu shots, so people stay healthy and that our health systems are not overwhelmed. I'm hoping there'll be a little greater capacity for testing going forward. We're continuing to work on that and develop that, but those would be my thoughts.
Thank you.
Councilmember Carson.
Diane, is there any way that we can start being able to facilitate the testing at a low cost and no cost for folks that are being financially challenged through this part, through this?
That's a really good question. Maybe Gary wants to speak to that as well. The county does have some kits available, and they still have the 4 rapid machines that we got here during the outbreak. But their plan, I think, is to reserve those in case a cluster is identified at a specific site in the county. Other than that, Gary, I don't know if the control room's been talking about testing.
Well, you know, the governor has announced last week that he was going to make testing machines and supplies available at no charge to counties throughout the state, and for free rapid testing access throughout the state. It appears that Otsego County is not one of the first in line, I learned today, to receive those tests, because they are being prioritized going to the counties that are having the greatest occurrences of COVID-19 right now. And in upstate Broome County, in our area, Broome County is one of those. So we do expect that we will receive a greater supply of machines and testing. It will be under the direction of the County Department of Health to decide where and when to provide those tests, but they will be, when they happen, free and open to the public, and they'll be rapid tests.
Good to know. Thank you, Gary.
If there are no further questions, and thank you, Dr. Jorgensen. And we're going to go to the consent agenda. I'll read through. Let me know after I do so of any motions you want to remove. Number 1 is motion that the council approves the minutes of the regular meeting, which was held on October 6th, 2020. Number 2 is motion that the council approves the minutes of the special meeting, which was held on October 12th, 2020. And number 3 is motion that the council approves the minutes of the special budget meeting, which was held on October 15th, 2020. Motion 4 is motion that the council approves the warrants totaling $709,833.82, and that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for payment as presented. Number 5. Motion that the council appoints Eugene Russell to the position of working supervisor. This would be effective on a date to be determined sometime after October 20th, 2020. This would be at an annual base pay rate of $39,768, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. 6, motion that the council appoints Tyler Hike to the position of firefighter, effective on a date to be determined after October 20th, 2020. This would be at an annual base pay rate of $37,494, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service and pre-employment screening requirements. 7, motion that the council appoints Bradley Darling to the position of call firefighter, effective on a date to be determined after October 20th, 2020, at an hourly rate of $14 per hour. This is subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements and all pre-employment screening requirements. 8, motion that the council appoints Darren Johnstone temporarily to the position of full-time firefighter at a base salary pay of $37,494. This would be effective October 21, 2020. The appointment will last for the duration of the long-term leave of a permanent incumbent in the Oneonta Fire Department and is subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. 9, motion that the council approves the bench and plaque donation policy as presented. 10, motion that the council authorizes the mayor to sign the letter of resolution among the Empire State Development Corporation, the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, and the City of Oneonta. This is in regard to the demolition of 27 Market Street here in the City of Oneonta, New York. 11, motion that the council authorizes the mayor to sign a 1-year contract with the State University of New York. This would be for the provision of testing services associated with the city's issuance of various electrician licenses, offering up to 2 one-day testing sessions annually for daily fees of $2,500 with $25 charged per test session participant for materials and $5 per participant for documentation. The contract shall remain in effect until December 31, 2021. 12, motion that the council approves the budget transfers and amendment totaling $93,458 as presented and per the attached reports. 13, motion that the council authorizes the amendment of the airport security system capital project budget from $81,000 to $91,000. This is for the installation and design costs, which will be funded by a $70,000 grant and $21,000 from our general fund. The additional $10,000 general fund contribution will be funded by transferring excess funds from the airport budget line A.5610.464, and they result from savings on the costs of runway repairs. That concludes the consent agenda. Do I have any requests to remove any of those items? Okay, I don't see any requests, so if there are none, I'll call the vote on the consent agenda as is. Councilmember Murphy.
Aye.
Councilmember Davies.
Aye.
Councilmember Risberger.
Aye.
Councilmember Lepari Shu.
Aye.
Councilmember Carson.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrington.
Yes.
Councilmember Rafter.
Aye.
Councilmember Drenick.
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda passes. Thank you. I'll open it up to any additional business. If there is none, I'll go to correspondence. I'm not aware of any. If the clerk is, let me know.
No additional correspondence.
Thank you, Carrie. Any other items for discussion that anybody wants to bring up? I'm not aware of the need for an executive session. So with that, thank you, everybody. And we are adjourned.
Have a good night, everybody. Thanks.
Good night.